All right, Larry Krueger here at Levi's Stadium on Wednesday for 49er practice. Full day down here in Santa Clara. Had a chance to talk to Kyle Shanahan, had a chance to go in the locker room, talk to some of the players in advance of Sunday's monster NFC game between the Niners and the Eagles. And of course, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week, from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. And this video is also brought to you by Mojo Fantasy. I'm loving Mojo Fantasy. Just click that, check that link in the description. Use the promo code KRUEG, K-R-U-E-G, and it'll match you for your first $100. All right, some 49er notes from down here in Santa Clara. First of all, on an alumni note, Patrick Willis has been named a Hall of Fame semifinalist. I think everybody knows that Patrick Willis is going to be in Canton before it's all said and done. One of the greatest linebackers that's ever played, first-class guy through and through. He's a Hall of Fame semifinalist, so he still has a couple steps to go. But good luck to Patrick Willis because, as I said, he's one of the great linebackers in the history of the NFL. Also, congratulations are in order for Christian McCaffrey because today he was named the FedEx Ground NFL Player of the Week. McCaffrey was incredible in Seattle against the Seahawks as a runner, as a receiver. He's been an MVP-type player all year. So McCaffrey wins the FedEx Ground NFL Player of the Week award. Kyle talked a little bit today about a number of different things, and we'll get into it here. He was asked about defending the TUSH push, the short yardage play that the Eagles have made so famous. And, he's like, you don't practice it. You coach it up. You tell the guys where you want them. You verbally go through it. But he was asked about it. He's like, yeah, we're going to do 10 live reps of it and see who's standing at the end of it. He's like, no, you don't. You talk about it. You show it. You talk about what you want to see from it. You instruct the players on where they should be, and then you do as good as you can. That was what he said. He said really the key in those situations is to keep them out of that tush push situation as much as possible. Interestingly, Michael Lombardi went on the Pat McAfee show and said that he would vote for Brock Purdy for league MVP. He said, I think he's really good. I think he'll play really well in Philadelphia. So count Michael Lombardi as a Purdy fan. He believes that Purdy's the MVP of the league. One fact that I saw today that I think is really interesting, the 49ers are 13-0 when they run for at least 115 yards under Brock Purdy and 0-3 when they don't. So if they can get the run game going against the Eagles, that obviously is going to bode very well for their chances of winning the game. As far as injuries today, Eric Armstead with a foot injury, Ray McLeod with a rib injury, and Jordan Mason with a hamstring injury, all did not practice today. Spencer Burford, who's battling some knee pain, was limited in practice for the 49ers. So that was the injury front. We went into the locker room. We talked to Javon Hargrave, and, he was asked about what makes Philly's O-line so great. And he just said the talent. The talent they have is what makes their offensive line as great as it is. He was asked about playing in Philly. He said it's going to be loud. He says there's going to be a lot of people talking junk. He said it's going to be a great atmosphere, and he seemed really at ease and eager to get back there. I had a chance to do a little extended one-on-one interview with Mitch Wishnowsky, and, I asked him, what's the key to the touch punt? Because Wishnowsky pinned Seattle on Thanksgiving night 3 times inside their 13-yard line. And he just said that the technique is a little different on touch punts. I said, well, how did you perfect it? And I said, is this something you always had? And he said, really from playing Australian rules football, that he learned, you have to pass the ball with by kicking it. And he said, he learned touch on his punts, how to take a little off, how to add and subtract from playing Aussie rules football. I thought that was kind of interesting. I asked him, what's his mindset, on the field as far as, his mental routine before games. He says he tries not to think too much. He talks a lot to Tabor Pepper, to Jake Mooney, and to Brian Schneider, the special teams coordinator. He said that Schneider's really a laid-back guy. He's a laid-back, relaxed guy, and that helps Mitch relax. I asked him about any pregame rituals, and he said, he goes out there and he takes some wind and weather conditions into, he kind of digests what the weather looks like, but he tries not to think too much about it. And then he'll go out there and hit some practice punts and tries to keep it real simple. I asked him a little bit about Jake Mooney, and what's it like, basically hanging out with Jake. And he said, hey, we talk about the pressure of being the fact that Jake was a 3rd-round pick and Mitch was a 4th-round pick. And he's like, hey, look, you can't control where you're picked. He said, we've discussed it. He's like, Jake, or Mitch's advice to Jake is don't let the outside noise impact you at all. But he was talking about Jake, and he's like, hey, man, he's a super relaxed, soft-spoken guy. He says he doesn't think too much, and that's a great thing. Mitch says that, he's obviously all in on the team goals, but he would be ecstatic if he was recognized as a Pro Bowl punter at the end of the year. And we talked about the possibility of that. Then we had a chance to talk to Nick Bosa, and he just talked about how the Niners and the Eagles both have Super Bowl aspirations, and that while the Eagles beat the Niners last year, they didn't reach their ultimate goal either. So it's not like they're going to have great memories of last year. Both teams' goal is to win the Super Bowl, and neither team did. I thought that was a unique way of looking at it. He was asked, is this a statement game? Nick said it's definitely a big game. You got 2 really good teams. He was asked about the key to Sunday. He said, we have to be on our assignments. He was asked about the key to defending Jalen Hurts, and he said, you really got to take care of the run game. You got to take that away from him, and then you don't let him scramble. Nick went on to say that when he scrambles, it's super deflating. And you can see that, for whether it be a quarterback that extends drives with his arm, or a quarterback that pulls out these Houdini running plays and extends drives. When drives get extended by incredible plays, whether it be running or passing from the quarterback, it is super deflating, and you can see the defenders getting deflated. So he said, we're going to have to rush as one. I asked him about going up against Mailata and Lane Johnson. He said it's the best offensive tackle combination that they'll face this year. He said they hold, they grab. He says they do all the veteran stuff that guys do. They're very savvy. He said we just got to rush as one D lineman, a coordinated rush, and keep closing the pocket. And he said the key was not to get too cute with your individual pass rushes and just try to keep him hemmed in the pocket. Kyle also said that the Niners will not practice with a wet football, despite the fact that there could be wet conditions in Philadelphia this weekend. He said that's not part of their game plan. He was asked about Brock playing in the rain and with a wet ball, and he said that Brock's as good a rain quarterback as he's ever had. He says he plays really well in the rain. He was asked about the tush push, said no, we're not going to practice the tush push. And he said the real key with the tush push is to just keep Philly out of those short yardage situations altogether. He was asked about Javon Hargrave, and Kyle admitted that he felt like Javon looked a little tired against Cincinnati in the Bengal game, and that he really badly needed the bye week. But since then, he's played much better. I asked him, or he was asked if it bothers him. I didn't ask this question, but somebody asked Kyle if it bothers him that the Niners are a 3-point favorite in this game. And Kyle just said, hey, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't make the odds, and I don't necessarily understand how they make the odds, but he said it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. He was asked about Ambry Thomas, and he said that Ambry Thomas has gotten better with every opportunity he's gotten. He says he's gotten better. He was better in camp and has gotten better each week. And then Kyle kind of expanded on Ambry a little bit and said that he really thinks things started to click for him in the offseason. He said he's been improved, he's more mature, he kept working, and that's why Ambry's at where he's at. Kyle also had really high praise for Demo Lenore. said that he's been really good outside and really good inside this year, and he's really happy with his play. And when he was asked about the differences between playing the slot corner inside and playing outside on the boundary, he said it's, you play inside, it's like playing linebacker. And you play outside, it's like playing corner. You got to be able to defend the run inside because you're in there and you're almost treated like a linebacker. And he says he loves the way Lenore has adjusted. Every single time they've asked him to do something different, he's adjusted and gotten better at it. He was asked about, is the game plan, partially like from last year's game plan, or do you start brand new? And he said, look, if this were an early season game, maybe you would take a little bit from last year's game plan and incorporate it into this year's plan. He said when the game's week 13 like this, you just watch the film and it's all about, what's going on right now and this year. He was asked about the star tandem of wide receivers, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and he just said, basically talked those guys up tremendously. So they're both number one wide receivers. They both can run verticals. They both can run comebacks. They both can run slants. They're both courageous going over the middle. He was very impressed with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, as he should be. I asked him about the Niners' run D because, to me, this is, if you go back to last year's game, as soon as Brock got knocked out, the Eagles decided they were just going to run it down the Niners' throat and kind of did. Niners only gave up 3.4 a carry, but the Eagles ran for like 44 times for almost 150 yards. And the Niners, on paper, statistically have great run defense numbers this year. I think they're second in the NFL in run defense. And I asked Kyle, I said, what do you think of your run defense overall recently and in this game? What do you think? And he's like, we've done a good job versus the run. The numbers kind of show that. He said we're getting better each week and we're ready for the challenge that Philly brings in the run game. So I thought that was interesting to hear. And then he was also asked about Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave. And he just talked about how the 49er D-line is on top of their game right now, and that Armstead and Hargrave are playing really, really well off of one another. I thought that was kind of interesting because I think you can see that Hargrave and Armstead right now, since the addition of Chase Young, have played incredibly well inside off of one another, and they're complementing each other at a high level. I asked Kyle if he uses his dad in big games like this. I mean, Mike Shanahan was one of the greatest offensive play callers and play designers and play sequencers in the history of the NFL. And, he's a relatively young man. I mean, and so many of these things can be done virtually as far as preparation. And I asked him, does he have a regular role in the preparation of a game for the game like the Eagles? And he's like, well, he knows when he's not in the building that, you can make a suggestion here or there, but that also could impact a lot of other decisions. And so he doesn't get too much into individual, suggestions, according to Kyle. But Kyle then admitted, he says, I lean on him for a lot, and I get advice from him on everything. So I think it's safe to say that Mike Shanahan is Kyle's, one of Kyle's consistent sounding boards. And I would not put it past Kyle to utilize his father's expertise, and that's really what Mike had too, is incredible expertise in offensive football, game planning, play calling, play sequencing, play designing. And I just thought that was an interesting answer. I basically took away from that, like, okay, so Mike's not in the building, and he's not necessarily making concrete decisions on exact plays and when to run them and that kind of thing, but he probably does consult with Kyle on just an overall mindset of how to defeat a team like Philadelphia. And on a transaction note, the 49ers have signed safety Eric Harris to the practice squad, safety Kamon Hall to the cornerback Kamon Hall to the practice squad, and released offensive lineman Henry Bird. Hall was an undrafted free agent in 2019. He's played on the Chargers, the Vikings, the Cowboys, and the Saints practice squads, and now he comes over here to the 49ers. Eric Harris is an incredible story. He's made 14 starts in 2019, 12 starts in 2020, 12 more in 2021. He played on all of the Atlanta Falcons coverage units. Great story. I did a video on this earlier in the week. This guy was, he's from Pennsylvania, went to California University in the state of Pennsylvania, and, has overcome a lot. I mean, he was working at a potato chip factory. He was working for UPS. He got into a bad car accident with his girlfriend. She had a brain injury. I mean, he's had a lot of adversity, but the Raiders gave him an opportunity. He went to a tryout for the Hamilton Ticats in the Canadian League, and that's kind of how he got back into pro football. And now he's had, a run in the NFL with the Raiders and now the Falcons. And the 49ers obviously moving Jair Brown into the starting lineup, losing George Odom, losing Talanoa Hufanga. They've lost some safeties. So they're going to be leaning on Taylor Hawkins. They're going to be leaning on Eric Harris, whether it be from backup safety or from special teams. Those are very key roles, and Harris could play as soon as this weekend against the Eagles. As I said, he was a key cog on Atlanta's coverage units. All right, that does it for the 49er update down here in Santa Clara. Niners practicing today and tomorrow, getting ready to head to Philadelphia at the end of the week. And then Sunday, 1:25 West Coast, 4:25 East Coast, Week 13, 49ers and Eagles. Niners got to have it if they want to have the if they want that first round bye, if they want any chance at hosting the NFC Championship game, they've got to have this one Sunday in Philadelphia. Should be a phenomenal week. Talking Niners and Eagles, and it should be an exciting game on Sunday. All right, thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show, and thanks to Mojo Fantasy for being the title sponsor of this video. Check out Mojo Fantasy. Check that link in the description. Make sure you use the promo code KRUG, KRUEG, and they'll match you for up to your first $100. And thanks to all you guys for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.